first walk of the Sufi Pastor. Come forward, inshallah. And in the courtyard, please come forward as well, inshallah.
You want another chair?
Yeah, please. It's too comfortable.
But that one.
This one?
That's fine. Sorry. Come forward, inshallah. It's going to be quite practical, like sorting out marriage problems within our community. I don't plan to take too long as well, inshallah. Normally when people think, oh, I've got one day off a week, I'll be talking about 45 minutes, maximum hour. Now I've got my keys now. And here's what I do. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Actually, one brother's praying. Please wait for me, inshallah. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونؤمن به ونتوكل عليه ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلله فلا هادي له ونشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له ونشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله صلى الله عليه وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين أما بعد فأعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم ومن آياته أن خلق لكم من أنفسكم أزواجا لتسكنوا إليها وقال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم الدين النصيحة أو كما قال صلى الله عليه وسلم رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي ثم أما بعد. Honorable ulama ikram, respected and honorable brothers and elders, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. It's actually Assalam qabla al-kalam. One brother I just realized was praying and then I thought I'd get salam afterwards, inshallah. So just starting off, what I want to mention is for us the blessing of Iman is the biggest of blessings. Everyone would agree that beyond this there is no bigger blessing than ni'mah. But for us as a community, the bedrock and the foundation and the strength of a Muslim home is of utmost importance. If your home is okay, then inshallah that will have an impact on the children. A happy home will create happy individuals, and mashallah you will see that individuals will flourish. What's happening in our communities is unfortunately the issue of talaq and the ratio of talaq has gone through the roof. Now, I don't want to say this next statement, but I have to say it because just to win the confidence of the individual sitting here. Part of my work, I'm a marriage counsellor. And when I'm in a counsellor, I study psychotherapy and marriage counselling. So I'm coming from a place of understanding, knowledge, and also that of experience. And what I want to do is, because it's a difficult task, that within 45 minutes, talk about what causes the problems and how the likes happen and how we can solve the problems. It ain't going to happen overnight. So I have people phone me up and they say, look, I've got this marriage issue, I need some time. Maybe, have you got 15, 20 minutes? And the problem is that I asked, how long has your problem been going on for? Oh, I haven't been getting on with my wife for the past 2 to 3 years. So you think a 15-minute conversation is going to solve your problem? And we want quick fixes. We think that the problem will be solved over just a click of a finger. It's not that easy. If you've made this problem such where it's developed over a long period of time, it might take a long time to resolve your problem. So why I'm saying that as like a disclaimer, I can't solve anyone's problems by sitting in this bayan, but I will talk to you about some things. I'll make some points as well so I don't sidetrack, about certain things that will help your marriage, inshallah, which are essential for a happy, successful marriage. Now, I'm not saying this is an exhaustive list, but these are some things that from the knowledge and study which I have done from a psychotherapy point of view, but also coupled with Islam. Because I believe that Islam is a religion, not a religion, it is the religion that will last until the day of Qiyamah. It is the only way of life that will sustain the test of time. Everything else, in my understanding, is secondary, primary, number one, first position, primary position is Islam and only Islam. And that's why I choose to be a Muslim. I'm not forced to be a Muslim. It's a conscious choice, a conscious decision. I believe Islam to be the only viable solution for 21st century and 31st century. Until the day of Qiyamah, Islam will be the best way of life for any individual. So then we also need to have solutions within our deen for the problems that we're facing within UK, within the modern day life in relation to relationships of marriage, upbringing of children, marriage, talaq, all these particular things. First and foremost, what I'd like to mention is just one hadith particularly, where Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, he mentions that إِنَّ إِبْلِيسَ يَضَعُ أَرْشَهُ عَلَى الْمَاءِ ثُمَّ يَبْعَثُ سَرَايَاهُ فَأَدْنَاهُمْ مِنْهُ مَنْزِلَةً أَعْظَمُهُمْ فِتْنَةً. What Shaitan does is that he convenes and gathers and has an assembly, and it mentions here his arsh and his throne is on water, and he sends his jama'ah, his cronies in different places throughout the globe to go and cause and stir trouble and cause fitna. وَأَدْنَاهُمْ مِنْهُ مَنْزِلَةً أَعْظَمُهُمْ فِتْنَةً. That shaitan, that crony of shaitan, which is most close to shaitan, is that one who causes the most destruction. The one that causes the most of a problem, that's the one who's closest to shaitan. فَيَجِيءُ أَحَدُهُمْ فَيَقُولُ فَعَلْتُ كَذَا وَكَذَا. Then they come and they give, like, na'udhu billah, their filthy version of their karguzari as to what they've done. So one of the shayateen would say, I did such and such a thing. فَعَلْتُ كَذَا وَكَذَا. Shaitan will respond to that. Iblis responds to that and will say, مَا سَنَعْتَ شَيْئًا. Kiya to kuch hai, but it's not nothing much. Koi khas cheez nahi hai. Koi maza nahi hai. You've done something wrong, but it's not all that. And then he mentions, ثُمَّ يَجِيءُ أَحَدُهُمْ. One of them will come. And he will say, مَا تَرَكْتُهُمْ حَتَّى فَرَّقْتُ بَيْنَهُ وَبَيْنَ إِمْرَأَتِهِ. I created a problem and a discord between a husband and wife. I didn't leave them until I separated them. Do you get what I just said? I didn't leave him and his wife until I caused a separation. Manager Wokia, then I left. What Shaitan will say, he will mention, Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, فَيُدْنِيهِ مِنْهُ. Usko apna kareeb karega. He'll bring him closer and he'll say in front of all of them, نِعْمَ أَنْتَ. This is good. Or if I use your language, buha. This, mashallah, na'udhu billah. Because he caused discord, he caused fitna. Now, a question may arise. Shirk is the most major sin. Why didn't he become happy on shirk? Ulama discuss this. Shirk and so on. Why did he rejoice over the breaking up of a husband and wife? Because it's like this. Al-i'adu billah, thumma al-i'adu billah. If someone were to do shirk, that shirk, that harm is limited to that individual. Usne apni akhirat barbaad ki na. Right? If someone commits an act of kufr, he himself or she herself has committed that act of kufr. But when you're breaking up a family and you're causing discord between husband and wife, you create sourness between two individuals, that trickles down onto the children, their families get involved, you cause a discord between two families, sometimes two tribes, sometimes two communities, and there is a collision and often sometimes catastrophic consequences as the issue of the breaking up of a husband and wife. And then we see it as well, because it's very common, that then what happens is that both husband and wife, once they are in the stage of when they're splitting up, because they don't want to seem to be the bad one, they then use the children against the other party to say, you know what your mum did to me. Do you know, they try to change the demand of the kid, giving their version. Then the mother will give her version. Do you know what your father did? He's like this, and So the kids grow up in a confused environment. And what that does to children is that children grow up feeling very confused and they don't know where their allegiances are. If you're nice to the mother, father will be upset. If you're nice to the father, the mother will be upset. Sometimes then we also bring this added one in there. The mother will say, you don't talk to your father's family. The father will say, you don't talk to your mother's family. So what we're doing is we're actually creating discord, but not between just two individuals, but it's trickling down into the children. They grow up being resentful. They grow up having a very insecure attachment in their lives because they don't know who they can trust. Trust becomes an issue. They don't know who they can reach out to, so they become insular. They know they're not those children that then can express their feelings, their true concerns, whatever's inside will dabar at them. And as a result, what that does is it creates a lot of difficulty for that individual later on in life. And then that, unfortunately, you see where that effect goes. So this is why Shaitan, Iblis, he rejoices, he's happy, and he applauds that particular that Shaitan, and he said, "Ni'ma anta." Agar koi kaam hona to isne kaam sahi kiya. This is the right thing to do. Now look, let me also add this as well. Some people just use this statement, and I'm going to say that it's partially true, but not always true. Some people say our biggest problem and only problem is just become pious. I completely agree with that statement, but then we also have to ask the question, did ever talaq happen between Sahaba? It's a question, and do you know the answer to that? Kabhi talaq hua Sahaba mein? No, there were some talaqs that took place. The question arises is that if it was just piety alone that can solve the problem, why did talaq happen even amongst Sahaba? So the question is food for thought. Let me just clarify my stance. I didn't say piety is not important. I'm saying it's very important. But there are added ingredients with piety that you need to understand in order for a marriage not to break up. Sometimes it's just a mizaj just don't match. Sometimes two people just cannot get on together. But then how they break up, they can do it in an amicable way, a decent way. They can separate in an appropriate way, without the thing of, for example, causing discord between two families, without causing the children to be involved. They can agree to disagree and say, look, for the bettering of our relationship, even though obviously Islam, we will exhaust every possible option before we get to this. I'm simply saying that if it does happen, it's not the be-all and end-all of life and civilization. You can still be a good mother and father to that child and you can work as a unit. But sometimes, I said sometimes, if the husband and wife just cannot reconcile their differences, and by having an ikhtilaf that will trickle onto the children and will cause them nuqsan and harm, then we have to think out of the box a little bit, that do we separate for the benefit and for the wider good, or do we just stay in it for name's sake, for show's sake, just because we don't want to upset any individual? So then if they separate on a decent way and they say, look, we will both have an active participation in raising the children, you will have my support, she will have her support, and we will work as a joint unit, it's just you and I cannot see eye to eye. That is the ideal situation. But unfortunately what happens is that because of the involvement of parents, because of the involvement of community, tane from individual, tana, like what do you call tane, like pump karna, like what do you call the tana in English, man? Like sorry? Stirring, yeah, basically I had another word in mind, but it's too hardcore for the masjid. So stirring is probably a bit of a sensible one. So people stirring, like putting their tuppence in and saying you should do this, you shouldn't do that. No. He's taking advantage of you, she's taking advantage of you. Harm is more created from outsiders than sometimes the difference between the husband and wife. So, like I said, is that just to understand that the difficulty which we have in our community, there's no quick, fast solution to this problem. But inshallah, Islam does have a solution to the problem. And like I just said, piety alone, even though it is one of the key ingredients, it's not the only ingredient. With that, there have to be other things. And if ever there was a separation, then we need to do it in a way which is decent. Even though however painful that word may be, it can happen, does happen, and will continue to happen. But all the things which are halal and the things which are permissible, talaq is the dislike from amongst them. But it's still permissible in times of necessity and in times of need. So no one should be ostracized in our community or criminalized or be made to feel less than just because they don't have a successful marriage. Some marriages just don't work out. It's just the way it is. Human beings are very difficult creatures to manage. I mean, adding one of the problems in, and this is one of the issues which we have, we need to create a culture where we can have open conversation and talk. Having an open conversation and talking within the homes can often prevent things from bubbling so high that they eventually burst. Now look, I mean, different cultures, different people, right? In some cultures, women are obviously they take more of an active role, men are more on a passive role, okay? Depending on, like, for example, depending on background, country, even state within country, the different mizaj, different people. So if you ask me to try and convince the very typical Pakistani mindset, be compromising, that itself is a challenge. And I'm not here to do, it's like I'm talking against myself ultimately. I am half English, half Pakistani, but I'm just putting it out there that not every culture is the same. But we have to develop that qadam and that step to be able to be open, to be able to receive, I don't use it criticism, it's called constructive feedback. If you use the word criticism, you take it as a negative because you think you're attacking me. It's not criticism. And we need to have that environment where they are able then to get what's off their chest. Because if you just suppress it, it doesn't vanish. It just stays suppressed. And then it comes out afterwards. And then also, let me mention one thing. Men are very blasé about things. Sometimes men can forget. Not all women are like this, but some women will remember and they'll say, oh, 3 months ago you did this for? You'd be like, bro, like 3 months ago, what are you talking about? Like, you don't even know and you're swearing that, I swear I didn't do that. And she's swearing, wallah, billah, you did all of this, and you're thinking like, wow, for real, like, is that genuinely what happened? Because some people just don't forget. So like I said, create an environment first where we can have that conversation. And that shouldn't be seen as a challenge, or it's not, let me say it like this, you're not any less of a man if your woman tells you she's not feeling too good. Listen to it, because this will solve a lot of problems. And one thing is, always allow the other person to be able to speak. Let them get off their chest what they want to say. Right or wrong, don't disagree at that time. Just let them say their piece. Sometimes it can be based on a misunderstanding. I'll give you an example, which is not marriage related, but something along the topic, and you'll get the picture what I mean. What happened was, I was invited in the local masjid to give a bayan once. And I was a student at the time. I hadn't graduated from my Alamiyya class, so I was in like Hidayah or Mishkar, or one of the years. And they needed someone to fill the gap, or, it was my khushi, their majboori, But Alhamdulillah, I can serve my community with the grace of Allah. I sat on the minbar and this is what I said. I said, today I'm going to speak to you, but not like how our normal ulama speak. And then I started my speech. So then there was 2 groups of people. Someone understood it to be, disclaimer. He put a disclaimer. Majority of the other side, someone coming and goes, this is what he said. I didn't say that second part. I didn't mean that either. My point is that you have to forgive me. I'm not an alim. Meaning I'm not going to talk like ulama because I'm not an alim. Do you get it? There can be 2 meanings that can be taken out of it. Do you get it? We go towards the negative meaning because then that means that is our under tarjumani, which is talking. That means you by your nature are a negative person, that you take everything negatively. And you fail to see the positive side of things. And even when people do present a positive side, you say, Oi nene, you're the simple one. He's jalak. How do you know what someone means? You can't see what's in their heart. So this is why it's essential that when we do give someone the benefit of the doubt, just listen. Don't challenge. It's their viewpoint, and until you haven't heard it fully, don't respond, just listen. And then you can present your version of it and say, this is what I truly meant. Now, if someone says, no, I'm not having it, then that's their problem, not yours. That's their problem. And if you do mean it, honestly admit, okay, I'm sorry, I did do that, but okay, how do we solve this problem? Let's not, don't be all stubborn about it, I did it, and what? That will cause more darar, that will cause more problem. So having a conversation, but also being open to listen to what next man or next woman's got to say. Very, very important. The ideal of marriage is that a husband and wife should find sukoon in one another. And this is how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has created. This is what the ideal is. وَمِنْ آيَاتِهِ أَنْ خَلَقَ لَكُم مِّنْ أَنفُسِكُمْ أَزْوَاجًا لِتَسْكُنُوا إِلَيْهَا وَجَعَلَ بَيْنَكُم مَّوَدَّةً وَرَحْمَةً. Allah has created a husband and wife so they find sukoon, peace and tranquility in one another. Love and affection and mercy. These 3 ingredients will be found in a successful, happy marriage. There shouldn't be a thing where people are unhappy. They're not feeling good. They don't feel comfortable. They don't feel secure. There's things that are key ingredients that are missing within that relationship. And generally what happens is that people keep the marriage together. Why? Because of community pressure, family pressure, sometimes just for the sake of children, but there are extra reasons what keep that marriage intact. I come from a family, right? Or I have individuals perhaps who are still abroad from my extended family, and they, hook or crook, whatever happens, they say, whatever jaijo marziho, we have to stay in this marriage. Yani wo, and we, what we say is, Niji mashallah mare log guzara karne wale log hain, which is undoubtedly true. They were very persevering and very patient. When we're dealing with a new tabqa of Najwan in UK, sabr wale nahi hai. They will get their needs met. And if we try to get them to hold on to the ideas which we had, which worked for us, it might not necessarily work for them. Now, for example, not that I'm like this, but hypothetically, if I'm I don't use like the word misogynistic because that's not really appropriate, but let's just say I'm a man's man, you get me? I don't do nothing around the house, and just use that word particularly. So what happens is that if my wife is such that she is happy to do that khidmah, there's a mutual understanding, then all be it. But for example, if we do find that our husband and wife in UK are not agreeing on these issues, is it incorrect for her then to want her husband to assist her or not? Now from a cultural standpoint, it's a no-no. Balki people even leave their plates on the thing, they won't even touch the plate. Balki hadiyan bhi usi ki jagah pe rakhenge. They even put certain cultures, different ways of doing things, and it works for them. But it's not going to work always for our youngsters that are here. That's why we're seeing the talaq ratios here go through the roof. And they say if a marriage has survived within the first 2 to 5 years, that means possibly this marriage may stay together. There's a make or break time. Like obviously you have the love phase and the affection phase, and then you kind of get into routine. That routine phase, which comes after a couple of years, subhanallah, it's tricky. You know what I mean? Because what happens is, I mean, look, I've got so much to say, believe me. I mean, you have why arranged marriages work? Because there's a thing in it, like this is an old school method, an old school way, and backwards, you should get to know the person and so on. Now listen, this is a long, different discourse, but I want to just say it like this. There are 3 types of couples. You either meet someone on a social fit, you either meet them based on a conscious fit, or it's an unconscious fit. Now I'll explain all 3 to what that means. 2 people from the same community. For example, 2 people from the same community, Gujarati family, Surti family or Baruchi family. I'm just sorry to go into the whole politics, but we know just as much. So we're just using this as an example. So 2 particular, both same families, both same village. They're both from the same place and they have the same culture. Family lineage is takriban the same. They have a similar sort of financial standpoint. You would say on a custom level, on a social level rather, this is a good match. So what happens is this is in line with the hadith that the Prophet ﷺ mentioned. تُنْكَحُ الْمَرْأَ لِأَرْبَعَةٍ لِحَسَبِهَا وَلِمَالِهَا وَلِجَمَالِهَا وَلِدِينِهَا. So we have a basis within Islam where the Prophet mentions that a woman is married for her lineage, for her wealth, for her beauty and her piety. But preference is always given to piety. Preference, but it's not, like I said in the beginning, it's not the only ingredient. It's one thing that is the backbone, but that's not the be-all and end-all. So like I said, what happens is there's a social fit. Now, for example, you have a different community. And by the way, let me add this in there. It doesn't mean because the social fit is not there that a marriage can't work. I'm half English. My mom's Gori English. She used to be a Christian, she became Muslim before marriage, and then, alhamdulillah, that's why if some people think I'm Pathan, I'm not Pathan, my father's from Punjab. So, but I'm in a mixed race family. Now, why I'm adding that in there, just to show that different marriages can work. Different, so because it matters on the person how flexible they are willing to be. A different culture, even though I know it's difficult for some people to hear this, but there's nothing wrong with it Islamically. If a culture, let's just say you have a difference of state, a difference of border, a difference of nationality, a difference of language, these are superficial things that you can make do with. If the deen is there, if the deen is perfect, but there's cultural differences, the marriage can still survive. But I'm saying, what happens is people choose a spouse for social reasons, and that's generally what happens with us, isn't it? Because we don't allow free mixing to take place. So if we think to ourselves, will he and she match because we're from the same culture, it would probably work. So that's more like a social fit. We have a social fit relationship dynamics in our communities. Then you have a conscious one, where basically what happens is you're actually seeking a certain partner that is a certain way. I want my wife to be like this, like this, like this. And she might say, I want a husband like this, like this. I'm ticking the boxes, she's ticking the boxes. Our family say, I think we found a perfect spouse for our daughter. And my father or mother are saying we found a perfect daughter-in-law. Because they're looking for certain sifat and we're looking for certain qualities. That means the social thing is not as important, but we actually, and if that quality can be found in someone from Pakistan, from Africa, from India, from America, from Europe, so be it, so long as the conscious thing is there. And then you have an unconscious fit. Now what happens is that what we don't realize is that each and every one of us has been nurtured a certain way by both mother and father. We ultimately want to seek those individuals that when your people are actively looking for a spouse, or actively looking for a wife, or actively looking for a husband, if, for example, they get to choose their own spouses, what happens is, why Islam has not permitted that there's free mixing is because of this unconscious reason. Because you would go into a marriage and you'll think, this is the woman of my dreams. You don't know what it is, you just think you know that this is the right one for you. It's something unconscious going on in your brain. What you don't realize is that you have a certain deficiency within you. There's something lacking within you, emotionally, something there that was perhaps not fit, or you do not find it when you was a kid. To fill that gap, we look to find other people that would fill that gap. We're healing old wounds. To put it like that, you're healing your own wounds of the past. Now what happens is, when you meet someone, you think you found the right person, you go through a love phase and then their true colours eventually come out because we always present the best version of ourselves. Don't we? If you come to me, I'm going to present the best version of myself, you're going to present the best version of yourself. It's human nature that we do that. That's why Umar radiallahu anhu, someone said he knows a particular sahabi. He mentioned, هل سافرت معه? Have you traveled with him? And have you done any sort of tijara with him? Have you done any business dealings with him? When the answer was given to the negative and the contrary, Umar radiallahu anhu mentioned, you don't know him. That is safar karuna. Do some business and then we'll see how you know that individual. So when you travel with someone, you get to know their true character. When you do business, you see someone's true character. If you don't know that, you're only going by face value. So when we present our children, or when we talk about when people are looking for a spouse or a husband and wife, we're presenting that thing, and then that is what attracts the other person, and then they fall for the quote-unquote bait. Now when that unconscious thing is met, and genuinely that person fills that deficiency or that gap which you have, that is a great sound base. And it's probably the most important base out of the three. But I hope I'm not confusing anyone, I'm going to come back a little bit. So these are three types of couple fits, as they say. For us as a community, our one generally is the first one, the more like social one. I have a son who's this age, you have a daughter that age. Even though we're not consciously discriminating, but I can understand why a person would want their daughter to marry someone from a Saudi background or a Punjabi background. I can understand from a psychological point of view. And it's not haram. It's only because you're used to seeing what you have, and that makes logical sense. And from a line of hadith, it's permissible, but never ever should it be that we make this the criterion to say, if you're not Gujarati, I'm not giving you my daughter. If you're not a Punjabi, I'm not giving you my daughter. If you're not Pakistani, I'm not giving you. Do you understand where I'm coming from? That's where fitna comes out. To accommodate that we want the same, but not to say, I won't accommodate you because you're not the same. It's a very fine line between the two, so understand that. So when someone goes looking for someone, they find someone who they think that social is out of the window, conscious is out the window, because they're trying to find someone who they're attracted to, someone who fills their unconscious need. When that need is not met, relationship breaks down. So that is why the system of Islam, where we don't allow free mixing, if you haven't understood what I've just said, let me tell you from an Islamic point of view, and this will resonate. Why Islam doesn't allow free mixing is because you don't have that thing where you're hooked because of your unconscious understanding. You go into that marriage and then how the person is, you accept them. If you're going in there thinking that person's going to fulfill your unconscious needs, then believe me, that marriage will eventually dissolve if you don't get those needs met. If you've understood that, fine. If you haven't understood, don't worry, inshallah. But there are some things in addition which I want to share, and these are some things which I think are really, really important, that how we can create some examples. Or first, let me ask why marriages particularly are breaking. What are some of those causes that are causing real rifts within our marriage, specifically in UK? Now, I'm not addressing another, I'm saying here at home, here in UK, what am I, through my understanding and working with in this particular field, what can I share with you that is a problem? The first thing, which is a very big problem, is over-involvement of parents within their children's marriages. This has got to be number one, believe me. It's got to be number one. From amongst I'm saying the outside problems. Let me take a step back. Before I mention this, what did I say has to be there at home? Communication. I said that, didn't I? Because that involves husband and wife themselves. So if the communication is not happening, that marriage will break down. So between a husband and wife, there needs to be communication, there needs to be love, mercy, rahmah, what I mentioned. But there has to be a level of communication. If there's not communication taking place, that marriage will break. But now I'm talking about those things which include outsiders that cause the problem. Communication is definitely on the list of things, but amongst those things of outside happening, number one is parents. Number one is parents. The two biggest complaints, my husband just doesn't understand me, he just doesn't talk to me, we just don't get along. Communication, that's your both problem, we can work on that. When they come and they say, my family is involved, my dad's involved, he tells us what to do, my mum's involved, my mum's always naraz, she says, why are you doing this for your wife, why didn't you ever do it for me, you're supposed to be my son, the whole guilt tripping thing, the child which other feels confused, he lashes out at the wife, she responds back, and then now we have WhatsApp Sharif, so she's messaging her mum, I had an argument, she goes, chod chad ke aaja. Leave everything, just come. And you see, instantly there's a connection and boom, they're gone. You know, if there was, I said, back in the days, if ever there was an ikhtilaf between husband and wife, you all would have to sit down, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, Yari ma ye hala. And then after you get to the end of the letter, they've got to now go to the post office, put a stamp, they go with the mehram, what's the letter for, so all these steps take place, but now, you take out your phone and boom, instant connection. So there's that weaning period in between is not happening. That's why parents are getting more involved as well. What would happen is there was no opportunity for parents to get involved because time would pass. And then after 1 or 2 days you say, Chalo, Allah la khair sallah. It comes with the territory. But you see, now because of these mediums, that's why we've got a bigger problem on our hands. As parents, we need to understand we have to give our children space. I'm going to mention a hadith in a second. Like I said, everything I'm going to say, I'm going to, bring back it up and substantiate what I say through Islam, so then there's nothing left to myself. But one thing particularly, even when it comes to extended relatives, what we're being taught by the Prophet ﷺ in Sahih Imam Muslim, he mentions, لا يحكم أحد بين اثنين وهو غضبان. لا يحكم أحد بين اثنين وهو غضبان. Never ever, in any capacity, judge between two people when you yourself are angry and upset. Very essential. If someone hears that my sister, something happened to her, your natural fitrah will be that you will automatically get agitated, and it's more likely you will take your sister's side in the heat of the moment because she's your sister. You don't think rationally at the time, in the split moment. If someone said your son is wrong, your instant reaction is to take your son's side. Unless, mashallah, you have such control over your nafs that you take a tanda stance and you say, nah, hold on a second. Let me try and process what's going on for myself here. Why am I feeling upset? Why am I feeling angry? But we don't have this way of thinking. I don't know about the Gujarati community, Pakistani community, definitely we don't have it. We just get gone fast. Like some people pop. So I'm nothing against the culture, of course. It's, we have good and fair and everything. But the reality is, going back to that point, if you try to get involved when mamala tabiwi and there's garam, you're only going to cause more harm. Sparks are going to be flying everywhere. So first and foremost, that is the outside issue which happens, the parents being involved. And the second thing, which is also another big factor between the husband and wife, is we do have a joint system to some extent, even living within UK. If we don't have privacy within our homes, this will also cause another big problem. Now, mashallah, there was a time, when, our elders came, my grandfather came in the 60s here, and there were like one house and, 8 kids, and mashallah, 3, 4 people sharing a bedroom. Lekin wo aaj मामला नहीं रहा. Allah ने mashallah दरवाजे खोल दिए इसके. Our communities have done fantastically well. and they're mashallah affluent individuals, so they have the means to be able to provide a good life for themselves. जहाँ पैसे खर्च करने होते ना वहाँ खर्च करते नहीं हैं. We don't spend the money in the right places. So I know I'm going off on the topic here, but I just want to add this. Some cultures are more vulnerable to this, that we will happily spend 20 to 50,000 pounds on a wedding. I did a nikah myself, meher alone was 25 grand. 25 grand, the meher alone. So instead of putting such exorbitant, I mean, I know meher, I know someone can give that if they want, Shara'an, we're not talking against it. They can charge what they like. But sometimes it becomes a means of show. Did you see that nikah? Not only nikah, there's a wedding that took place. He was riding in a tank. Did anyone see that? It went on viral and so, oh, London bandeo. You're in a tank in the street and the people are talkies and the guy's on like wearing a malat, he's on the tank. Oh, what's going on in people's brains? Like we'll chuck thousands upon thousands for that. But if you take all the money that was spent on the khurafat and the things that weren't even necessary, the mendiya and all these fazul customs, put that money together, you could easily, in some instances, give them enough money to say, look, ya maa ko de rahe hain, jab paisa enough ho jaye, deposit rakho, halal tarike se ghar mein kharido. Have your own place. Do you get where I'm coming from? But rather, we'll spend the money on the khurafat because for us as a means of da'wah in our community. So we get our priorities a bit skewed. But the second problem, what happens within joint families is an issue of privacy. That's when there is an issue of joint families that happen. Because look, obviously, so we have to be careful how we speak. If someone has just got married, you're going through, within the first 1 or 2 years, this is a very, very delicate period. Okay? This is like the in-love phase. The truth is that this is the time when a husband and wife, because we don't have that pre-bonding stage before getting married. So for us, at the moment the girl says, or the boy says, I accept her in my marriage and so on, they start on a new journey and a new life. I mean, this is also something which is amazing from the signs of Allah, that at the moment that nikah happens, instantly, within the love and muhabbat, within days it starts to increase massively. When people do things the halal way, Allah Himself will put barakah. If we do things that are going to disobey Allah, it's going to barakat nahi hoti hai. But going back to that point, as I mentioned about the privacy thing, this is a very essential stage this first couple of years. The husband and wife need to be able to bond and build a relationship amongst themselves. In a joint family system, how do people do that when there's that conscious decision all the time? Okay. Okay. How would I think how I'm going to say this? Okay, so what are people going to think if I have to wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning, for example? And people hear what's going on, and if you can understand what I'm going to, using a very vulgar language, you get where I'm coming from. That what are people going to think? If you understand what I'm saying. Now the problem is that then creates frustration within a marriage. A person can't express their true feelings, their emotions, and so on. These feelings remain suppressed; they don't disappear. Some people don't need to understand. This is which my mom said as well. So what happens is these are suppressed feelings that happen. My man's building up some mad tension, and that's why after they start, marriages are popping off because we're not allowing separate space. And then sometimes this isn't even that important for everybody because that's not the driving force. But what can cause a problem is in a joint family system, a woman, I don't know what it is, but they are ultra protective over the things of the home, like plates and bartan and these things. There's been, obviously, even myself, like I remember a couple of weeks ago, mashallah, after the fajr, after the mashura, the brothers, they arranged the breakfast. So I had to take some pandey and some, they call them like bartan from the home. And my wife, she just said, she goes that whatever happens, make sure you bring the bartan and then come home. Make sure you bring the spoons, and in our community, they even get the chisel and they chisel them in it. Like they put the names on there, like we make sure. We haven't got that situation, but I've seen that as well. Like I picked up a spoon and it said like such and such a family, and I'm thinking, yeah, Allah, even the spoons have been tagged around, so no one takes the spoons. You know what I mean? So women are sentimental with this stuff because sometimes they receive it in their jahiz and so on, so they're very particular. Jahiz, that's another discussion, but anyway, if we don't allow a way for a woman to express her culinary skills, to be given that flexibility within the home, that's a part of her, perhaps, that she's not exploring. That can lead to frustration. Do you get what I'm trying to say? In short, give the woman a space to cook herself. This is why they say that if you can't have a separate home, try to have a separate place within the home where have like an extension on so they can cook and do their own thing separately. It sounds trivial, but why would a woman get vexed over cooking? Bro, if you want to do the cooking for me, do it. I'm not bothered. But the women take this seriously. If you step on her cooking rights, trust me, some of the women take it serious. Now what happens, another thing, let's just say it's a joint family system, you have one, a couple of families involved. Someone eats the food, like the husband was like, Masha, bro, who made the dal? Who made the dal? The new daughter-in-law. Oh, both nice. The other one will say, man, to punch hard se pakari. No one ever said nothing about my dal, bro. You get me? And then what happens is then she'll say to the husband, Acha, ye jo nahi aayi na. Lagta hai ki mashallah she's getting all the attention. Can you see how something so small, just by you praising a dish, what it can do? So that's why, if there's something we eat, mashallah, everything is great, alhamdulillah. It seems trivial, and for men it's like, we don't think like this. You praise the biryani more, and the other one didn't get the praise the same way. Or let's just say someone tasted the dokla and the khum, and they said, this is the one, that's the sponginess, the right amount of mustard seeds, you clocked it. The other one's going to go away. She's going to smile, but angaruni she's going to be burning. You didn't like my mum's recipe, but you like her mum's recipe. You see? So it's something that seems trivial, but then, like I said, the feelings are suppressed, they don't die away, and then they pop in other ways later. So what they do is sometimes is that either way, the spouses, whether it's man to the woman to the man, then they inject their understanding to the parents that, you know why your parents did that? Because I'm old, they don't like me anymore. Now what that jallah, he doesn't understand. He will fall for that because he himself hasn't got that understanding. So he's an emotional, he's driven, he's one of those people that is going to be swayed by his missus if he's not careful, and she will be swayed by her husband if she's not careful. Do you see where I'm coming from with this? So again, it seems trivial, but then if you've got, so now what is the hull of this? What's the solution? Because we can have a laugh and joke about it. Excuse me. If you've got affluent means, consider that our families start separate, and then if later it needs to be, let them move back in. It may seem small, but believe me, it can solve a lot of problems. Those families where they don't have this problem, then there's no issue at all. But those families which does become a problem, it doesn't just become overnight. What happens is the problems simmer and they boil and they fester. And then what happens is that then to reconcile afterwards becomes very difficult. So that's why I suggest that if you have affluent means and it's possible, let them start out separately, let them start their own lives. And then mashallah things can come back and we can all live like, under one roof and so on. But we have to be very, very careful. And what I was talking about the involvement of parents, I wanted to share with you one particular hadith. Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu, he came to the house of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and it mentions that Aisha radiallahu anha was raising her voice talking to the Prophet. She was angry with him. So Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu heard this, he knocked on the door, he said, may I come in? So he enters into the house and he mentioned, Ya Roman. Oh, he's talking to his daughter Aisha radiallahu anha. Are you raising your voice in front of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam? And he went to go and physically grab her, like he was frustrated. How dare you raise your voice to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam? The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam intervened, and it was a high between Abu Bakr and Aisha radiallahu anha. Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu, he calmed himself down, he took ijazah and left. The Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam turned to him and goes, you see how I saved you? The hadith is wonderful. There's so many lessons. There's so many wonderful lessons you can learn from this hadith. Number one, can you see how the father-in-law came to the house with respect? He sought ijazah. Not to say, I'm coming in, force my way in. No, adab, ihtaram, may I come in? When he come in, not shouting from outside and so on, he comes in and he says, what, are you raising your voice to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam? Now obviously at this point he realized that he was angry. When he got frustrated, Prophet ﷺ came in and he didn't say nothing, sought ijazah and left. He didn't say anything extra. We learn from this very important usul, don't get involved when you're angry. You see what I mentioned about the hadith? Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu practically showed it. Don't get involved. But also, let's take a step back. What was actually happening behind the scenes? Who was she raising her voice to? The Prophet ﷺ. Nabi ﷺ was listening to that. Did he hear it and say, shut? He didn't do that. He listened and he just was listening to it. मैं इस वजह से क्या तो कभी इनको वेंट करने दो यार, वो चलता रहता है. And we learn this from the Seerah and the Sunnah. Like I said, culturally, if I said this in a certain masjid, they'd say, what's this Maulvi? What's he preaching? So that's why I say the hadith, the hadith ek mazak nahi hai. If Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam can do it, and he did it for a greater cause, कि भाई औरत की फितरत में कभी है, let her vent her frustration. After she's finished, no problem. Can you see, for the wider khair and the wider good, कभी चलता रहता है husband and wife में. It's okay. या market में चलता रहता है. He allowed it. And then what happened was, right, subhanallah, is, can you see how then he made a joke out of it? So he took, to bring her mood up, he said, you see, how I became high between you, and I saved you between you and that man. Like, as a joke. He didn't say Abu Bakr, the wording, it was such that he used it, he goes, I saved you from that guy. Like, it was like to catch, to lighten the situation. So many Mubarak lessons you can learn from the Sunnah. So you see, to make her happy, he's trying to create a joke. He's trying to lighten the situation. By throwing more fuel on the fire. Who are you talking to? Don't you know I am the man, I provide, and your job, you don't find this in the Seerah. You find it where he tries to mellow the situation, not laughs it off, but you can say comfortably jokes it off, to bring balance and bring harmony within the home. Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu, after some time he came back, he saw ijazah for a second time. And when he came the second time, he heard them that they were both laughing and joking in the home. And he mentioned this wonderful statement, subhanallah. He mentions, radiallahu anhu, he mentions, أشركاني في سلمكما كما أشركتماني في حربكما. He goes, please do me a favor. Can you join me in your peace, just like you just joined me in your war? He referred to it as a war. Not your ikhtilaf, not your dispute, but to me, it can be so intense sometimes that it can feel like it's going to that extent. But he said, now can you re-include me in your happiness, please? To create again that harmony, that, let bygones be bygones type of thing. There are so many other lessons you can learn from this. But like I said, I just wanted to show you that parents' involvement, you're talking of the Sahabi, they set the best example. Rasulullah the best example. What more do we want? So learn that parents also need to sometimes hold the reins a little bit. That doesn't mean we allow zulm to take place. It means that where necessary, we just take a step back. If something wrong is taking place, shar'an, something which is zulm, then we step in and we have to intervene. But then there's a method and a way how to do it. It doesn't happen with badmashi, it happens with adopting the proper means. So in conclusion, because I've only got a couple of minutes, I said I was going to talk for 45 minutes and I think I've been around that time already, roughly. But I just want to, so I don't sidetrack, I want to mention a few more things inshallah. So there are some things that husband and wife can particularly do. Let's just say, for example, you don't have the issue of the extended family, parents are not involved, but they're just husband and wife aren't getting on. What can we do? Communication apparently seems there. I mean, we talk, but we're just not hitting the mark. What do we do? So number one, as mentioned in the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, he mentioned that to give salam more. Something so small like giving salam, and not just saying salam, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Really extending salam. This is a great means. The Prophet ﷺ mentioned that لا تدخلون الجنة حتى تؤمنوا ولا تؤمنوا حتى تحابوا أولا أدلكم على شيء إذا فعلتموه تحاببتم أفشوا السلام بينكم. He mentioned that the way to create you cannot be a believer. Let's say the full hadith. You will never enter Jannah until you are a believer. You will never be a believer until you don't truly love. Now, shall I tell you something that will create mutual love amongst you? You just spread salam amongst each other. You can take this on a micro level, macro level, families, wider community. But to spread salam is very important. Not because I know this brother, because he is part of my lineage or village or family, or this person's my bradri, this person's from my ilaka. Spread salam to everybody. And believe me, that will create a lot of mutual love and muhabbat, even within the home. In addition to that, so the first thing is saying salam. And in addition to that is also smiling as well. The Prophet ﷺ mentioned, كُلُّ مَعْرُوفٍ صَدَقَةٍ. Every good act is an act of sadaqah. And he mentioned that وَإِنَّ مِنَ الْمَعْرُوفِ أَن تَلْقَ أَخَاكَ بِوَجْهٍ طَلِقٍ. From amongst the acts of piety and the acts of goodness is that you meet your other fellow Muslim in a way which you have a smiling face. Why is it that we smile so much outside? In the office we're smiling, in the business of the customers we're smiling, and when we come home the smiling muscle, again, we stop smiling. So she gets the brunt of us. To go home with an even more smile. She's been at home, I'm talking in the general setup, by the way, yeah? the traditional setup. Otherwise, this is not applicable to every scenario. But generally, I'm saying that in our sort of setup of things, we prefer generally that the women, if there's no need to leave the home, do the khidmah within the home, I'll be responsible for the care outside. You just take care of the situation at home. That's the general traditional setup, and I'm just addressing that particular thing. The smiling with the husband, but generally, like I said, when I say when you come home, someone will say, well, what if she's not at home? Well, okay, then I'm saying generally the traditional thing is the women, they stay at home. They've been doing all the khidmah at home, looking after the children, the handiya is cooked and the clothes, everything's done. She's absolved you of all your responsibilities. Uska haq to ye banta na ki aap salam do, pucho, how did your day go? Salam, smile. It seems small, but it goes a very, very far way. Number two, right, is remember this. I don't have time to go into it, but there's some love languages which husband and wife can use. One of them particularly is words of affirmation, that the more words of affirmation that you give to your wife or she gives back to you, this will create love. And the way to do that is to praise the things they do. Be thankful. This can work for husband to wife, wife to husband. It works in a both way. If your love language is such that you respond to words of affirmation, you like people to praise you, then it will help that the husband and wife to praise each other. Now remember, each and every one of us has a certain inclination. Sometimes you might like words of praise, sometimes you might want quality time, someone you might want physical, gifts, like financial gifts. One is touch, physical touch. These are all important things within a relationship. But sometimes words of affirmation are sometimes the most important for a husband and wife. So if that's your love language, if that's what you respond to, then respond to one another more. But generally speaking, praise one another. Thank you for this. I really appreciate the things you do for me. Thank you for being at home. Thank you for doing this for the children. It seems, again, like I said, these things may seem like logic, that we know all this, but the problem is we don't do it. That's why the things that are easy, we overlook. You're expecting some complex figure, some some equation. No, simple things go a long way. So praising more often, speaking to them with words of affirmation. And in addition to that, like I said, spending quality time. Quality time does not mean husband and wife are sitting with each other, she's on WhatsApp, you're on TikTok. Put the tikra phone to the side and lock it off, because no call is more important than her at this moment in time, and no more call is important for you than you at the time. You know what? People say, what if I miss an important call? Oh, ghar phone kar lenge. Itna zarorat hai, ghar phone kar lenge. Na ho to ghar pahunch jayenge. If it's that important, they'll come. I work with one guy, subhanallah, he refuses to have a mobile phone. Believe me when I say this, it's not a joke. It makes him alien in some youngster's eyebrows. What, you're alright, mate? No phone? Yeah, no phone. He doesn't have a phone, and I said to him, what if someone needs to contact you? And he's like, this is what he responds. He's a Punjabi guy, like a Sikh Punjabi. He's one of my colleagues. He goes to me, if they want to get hold of me, they'll find a way. And I thought, I said, how about other things like, extra, keeping in contact with people and so on. He goes, the people that mean the most to me, we will also stay in contact. I thought, wow, man, that's quite profound. That's something that he thought up himself. If it's important, they will find a way to contact, and if they mean a lot, you will be in contact, I will be in contact. Why don't I with just superficial figures on the phone? I have 100,000 followers. Okay, follower hai kitne? Just such follower. People just following, just get on, okay, what is this person doing, what are they posting? But genuinely that will follow you, literally step by step, will be there for you in your time of need. So this is why I said the phones are causing a problem. A big, big problem. So many issues in the homes are happening because of phones. Woman says, he doesn't talk to me, he's just on his phone. I try talking to him, he's staring. If I'm holding my phone and I say, yeah, I'm coming, how are things going? All right, yeah, okay. How's that giving attention? Put the phone down and you give attention to the person. You're focused on them. You're invested in what they've got to say. You're showing interest. That goes to show that this person genuinely cares. So like I said, words of affirmation and spending quality time. This means a lot to a lot of individuals. And then you have, like, for example, now, like I said, like doing an acts of service. An act of service for one another. When the wife does something for the husband, or the husband does something for the wife, this creates a lot of muhabbat. The fact that, for example, let's just say, hypothetically, hold tight when I say this, yeah? Let's just say, for example, the wife which I tuck you in, the man says, don't worry, I'll do the dishes, you can take a seat. Yeah, it's alright. Sorry if that sounds radical, yeah, but it's just a suggestion, inshallah. You know, or would you like me? You know, she wants something done. Okay, can we go somewhere? I need you to get this. Yeah, come, let's go. You know, I'll get what you need to get. You do a thing for her which she appreciates. You get it? That's an act of service. It can work both ways. In addition to that, like I said, is gifts. Allah ne agar mauka diya, buy something small. And the gift doesn't have to be these big, grandiose chandeliers and big. So it can be simple, small things. But it's the thought that counts. The fact that when you went, you bought me something which had quote unquote meaningless value, but it had deeper value because it came from your heart. Do you get what I'm saying? Yeah. So gifts, exchanging gifts. Tahadu tahabu. The Prophet said, exchange gifts and you will create love. So beautiful from the Seerah and the Sunnah. We're taught these things. You know. And then in addition to that is obviously sometimes it's the aspect of physical touch. Now physical touch, obviously, there's one aspect, but I'm talking of the general thing, just placing a hand on someone's hand, putting their, obviously I'm referring to. But the Prophet ﷺ once had his lap in Aisha radiallahu anha, his head in the lap of Aisha radiallahu anha. You know, that's a physical display of emotion. These things, again, men, we're slightly wired different. For us, these aren't always big things, but for women, they can make a massive difference. You know, but yes, there are men that do believe that some form of physical touch like this, it's a display of love. So if that is that person's love language, that would mean a lot to them. But yeah, I told you there's a lot of things, but I'm just trying to keep, inshallah. And last but not least, what did I say in the beginning when I started my bayan? I said, what is the backbone of a relationship? Can anyone remember what I said? What is the backbone? That is piety. Mashallah, see, young man, yeah, Allah, this is what I'm saying, bro. These mans are on the board. Yes, piety. If you have piety, that is the backbone, but it's not the be-all and end-all. So what we need to do, we need to create our homes, aqila al-deen. By ta'aleem ko zinda karo. Start ta'aleem. Ulama, they didn't just win this out of the air. That's why our ulama are saying, start the 2.5 hours ta'aleem, start the ta'aleem at home. Start them, make mashwara at home, include the family in your mashwara. Have gatherings of, learning and ta'aleem within the homes. This will go far. Because that will work on the piety and the spiritual development of our families. Another beautiful thing, subhanAllah, how many of us take out time, I'm going to pray 2 rakats, I'm going to make dua just for my wife, just so that she makes dua for me. How many times have we actually done that? I've got a problem, I'm just going to pray 2 rakats, I'm going to make dua, Ya Allah, please. Give my wife jazayah, give her a healthy life, reward her for her actions. Because we think it's her haqq to do it, she has to do it. So that's why we take it for granted. But to make dua for one another, it creates an amazing amount of love. Allahu Akbar. So I've mentioned everything which is important, but last but not least, and this is the last one which I'll touch upon, is that it's very important to keep. What can cause problem a lot later on is that husband and wife can start to feel gin. Gin is like if someone's looking butters all the time. Using a bit of street language here, but if a person's going to go home, they're not caring how they look disheveled, beard is everywhere, like breath is rocking up and stinking. I'm sorry to give you this as an example, but this causes a problem. We need to be those people that look after ourselves as well. There has to remain a spice between husband and wife where we find each other attractive. If the attraction dies down, you will be bodies in a relationship, but you won't be husband and wife. The love will be there on another level, but there won't be that attraction. That can create a dull marriage. So that's why it's important that, why did the Prophet ﷺ go to the masjid first and then go to the home? You don't just bowl home. The WhatsApp somehow we can inform them, I'll be home 10 o'clock, I'll be home 9 o'clock. Inshallah, I'll be home this. So they know in advance, because my man's coming home. Now you go home, hair all everywhere, you're smelling of tul madrak and, or the man goes home, he's all messed up, disheveled. That doesn't create a physical attraction. The love is there, mashallah, they're home, but it doesn't create an attraction between the husband and wife. So that's why it's important. Okay, let me give you an example from the Sunnah so we know what's up. What was the first thing the Prophet ﷺ would do when he entered the home? Miswak. But then he would make miswak. Why? Presentable. And he ﷺ, all these things. So we learn from this that to be presentable in front of the wife is also part of the Sunnah. So he naturally had a very beautiful fragrance. He was very mu'attar himself. He emanated with fragrance. So similarly with us, it's always good to look good, try to put an effort into our appearance, try to remain smart and clean. Smart and clean doesn't mean we have to wear designer clothing and bust expensive clothes and that's superficial. But to genuinely look after one's appearance and take pride in one's appearance, it's important for a long-lasting marriage, inshallah. So I've mentioned many things. I'm going to stop here because the truth is it's a very big topic. And I hope I've shared some things with you that can help and be of some assistance. Obviously, any shortcomings, deficiencies are only and purely from myself. And any khair always comes from Allah Ta'ala. It comes from the deen, alhamdulillah. And what I've tried to present are some things. We don't agree with everything in the Western world in terms of the model and how to work with relationships, because there are some things that we just don't agree with. But keeping consistent with our faith, keeping consistent with Islam. Within Islam, we have such Mubarak teachings, and the things which I have agreed with, backed up from evidence I've shared with you. If anyone thinks there's anything contrary to that, please speak to me afterwards and we'll clarify it, inshallah, further. Because from my understanding, my tahqiq and what I've learned, I believe everything which I mentioned, inshallah, bi'ithnillahi ta'ala, has been from a base of evidence and dalil, inshallah. So may Allah Ta'ala give us the true understanding. If anything has come from myself, then may Allah Ta'ala forgive any shortcomings that have been mentioned. May Allah Ta'ala give us security, peace and aman within our homes. Kaam se hoga, na husne kalam se hoga. You have to make effort. Marriage is something that requires effort as well. Allah Ta'ala inspire one another. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillah. ربنا ظلمنا انفسنا وان لم تغفر لنا وترحمنا لنكونن من الخاسرين. اللهم لا مانع لما اعطيت ولا معطي لما منعت ولا ينفع ذا الجد منك الجد. اللهم ارنا الحق حقا وارزقنا اتباعه وارنا الباطل باطلا وارزقنا اجتنابه. اللهم انصرنا نصر دين محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم واجعلنا منهم يا ارحم الراحمين. واخذل من اخذنا دين محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم ولا تجعلنا منهم ولا معهم. اللهم أيد الإسلام والمسلمين. اللهم انصر المسلمين في كل مكان يا أرحم الراحمين. اللهم اغفر لنا وارحمنا وعافنا واعف عنا يا أرحم الراحمين. اللهم إنا نسألك الجنة وما قرب إليها من قول وعمل ونعوذ بك من النار وما قرب إليها من قول وعمل. ربنا تقبل منا إنك أنت السميع العليم وتب علينا إنك أنت التواب الرحيم. رب اغفر وارحم وأنت خير الراحمين. سبحان ربك رب العزة عما يصفون وسلام على المرسلين. الحمد لله.